webinar specifically on peer visitation. Thank you for taking time out of your day to be with us. We'll be together for the next hour, and we have a lot packed in. Hopefully you will find it useful to creating a peer visitation program at your hospital, gaining some ideas and some knowledge in this program. The main components of the TSN as a review include a handbook, a website, support group, peer visitation, family class, and next steps. So just to give you that big picture, today we are going to focus specifically on peer visitation. The goals for this webinar are to provide the basics for starting a peer visitation program, to provide examples of peer visitation from a TSN coordinator currently facilitating peers. Here's from a current peer visitor, and at the end we will have time for questions and conversation. So I encourage you during this presentation to write down any questions you have that may come up, and we are all happy to answer any of those questions at the end. For those of you who are current TSN coordinators, you can find, once you log into the website, you can find under coordinator resources an implementation guide with a peer visitation section that will clearly outline the steps that I'm about to go over on peer visitation, so you have a reference to go back. If you're not currently a TSN site, then when you become one, you will gain access to these resources. Today we're joined by Ian Weston, who is the Executive Director of the American Trauma Society, Harry Teeter, National TSN Director, Sarah Hendrickson and Jen Shabana. They are both from Metro Health in Cleveland, Ohio. Sarah's a TSN coordinator, and Jen is a survivor who will be talking to us towards the end. I'm going to go over the basics of peer visitation, what you need to think about when you're forming these groups of peers. What does it look like when you're bringing peers into a hospital? What should you be thinking about? Who should be involved? So just an overview here. I'm going to give you an introduction to peer visitation, establishing a group of peer visitors, peer visitation training, and facilitating those visits. What is peer visitation? Recovering trauma patients become involved in the TSN for many reasons. They include the opportunity to share experiences with other survivors, to learn new coping strategies, and support other survivors during the recovery process. We have found that peer visitation is one of the more popular and important activities that you can provide. Trauma survivors are at such a unique advantage because when they provide support to new trauma patients, they have lived through their recovery experience. They understand the concerns of a new trauma patient on a deeply personal level. Training is important to help them become prepared to become peer visitors. So we're going to talk about all of these things today. What is a peer? A peer is someone who's had experience in trauma, so a crash, a fall, an industrial accident, and is now living a productive life. A peer completes the training program in preparation to support others. A peer is a sensitive listener who uses their training and communication skills to facilitate the patient's recovery. I think it's important to mention that peers are not professional counselors, they're not therapists, they're not advisors of medical, legal, or other issues. They're not problem solvers, they're simply a support, someone who's been through a trauma before. Peer support is widespread. You can find peer support for cancer survivors, you can find it for amputees, you can find it burn programs, if you're familiar with SOAR. There are a lot of different peer support programs, and the TSN offers that same support for trauma survivors. It's the same idea. Peer support often happens informally in waiting rooms or at rehab centers, and this is a way to formalize that peer support and allow it to happen in a hospital. Trauma can be a very isolating experience. Many of you, if you're not a survivor, have worked with trauma survivors and have probably heard how alone people feel in the recovery process. Peer visitation is one way to help those folks who are going through trauma connect with someone else who has been through that experience, who understands in a different way what they're going through. So, and provides a different kind of support than their family and friends may be able to provide to them. Peer visitation goals are to offer the patient an opportunity to share his or her experience and to feel understood. It offers an ability to provide encouragement and communicate empathy from someone who's been there. And answer questions the person might have and offer some perspective on the recovery process. There are lots of benefits to peer visitation. We'll name a few right here. But peer visitation doesn't just benefit patients. It benefits family, it benefits the trauma team. Patients and families can find hope when they interact with another survivor. Not only do the patients hear from someone who's been there, but the family members can ask that survivor, that peer, questions about what their recovery was like, and be helpful for the families too. Patients obviously will have an opportunity to talk with someone that has been there. And it's a healing experience for the peer and the patient involved. Hospital staff care a lot about the patient, but they cannot always dedicate this time to sit and listen, and to have an opportunity to have a pool of peer visitors to choose from who can come back into the room and offer that support. It gives the staff the ability to still offer that support even if they can't be in the room listening. Establishing a group of peers. I'm often asked immediately, how much does this cost? What is this going to cost? And the answer is, most of the cost is the time and energy of a coordinator who's coordinating the visit. So it's about what you have to offer. When you start thinking about providing a peer visitation program to your patients or in your hospital, include your staff during the planning process. Working with the staff may help you identify members that are interested in helping. They may have had experience in peer support in the past, and you wouldn't have necessarily known that unless you invited some people to tell them about what you were planning. They also may help you identify potential peer visitors who could get involved. One of the things you might hear is, I know somebody for you. Let me get you connected with the survivor who's doing this work or that work, who could be a great peer visitor. Include the physicians, the therapists, the nurses, the social workers. Let them know about what you're doing or what you're planning. They could help with referrals. They may even be able to help with the training. And include the hospital administrators, managers, and media relations. They can help build institutional support. Identifying potential peers can happen in a couple different ways. I just talked about how you might be able to get referrals from hospital staff that you already have. You may also be able to find some sort of brochure that you could send out, let people know what you are doing. You could post flyers, places where you could let people know, maybe at a different support group meeting or in a rehab center. Those would be some ways. Some of us have used direct mailings. We've gone to a registrar office and set some certain criteria and then pulled some addresses and sent some letters out letting people know that the peer visitation program is starting, and if they were interested in participating in it, they could give you a call. Hospital newsletters are another way to get the word out. And again, referrals from staff, which might be your best first start. Once you find your peers, they need to do 2 different trainings. The first is peer visitation training, which we offer you all the tools to do if you're a current TSN site and hospital volunteer training. I do recommend you do them in this order because the peer visitation training does get you ready. It lets you get to know the survivor and gets you familiar with whether they're going to be a good fit for peer visitation at this moment, or if maybe they need a little bit of time before they're ready. As I said, all the manuals are available to all TSN coordinators. Under coordinator resources, you would be able to find a training manual and a trainer manual. The training includes, but is not limited to, these different components. It helps you work with the survivor to develop what is the role of a peer visitor. It helps provide information on how to present oneself in a helpful manner when they're in the room doing the peer visit. It can help increase sensitivity to the emotions that follow traumatic injury, help the peer understand stages of grief, stages of loss, improve listening skills, and gets them tuned into their nonverbal communication, not just theirs, but the patient. I'd also like to mention that this training is very comprehensive. It is a 2-day training written as is that can be modified based on the needs of the peers that you are training. It is important to think of who is ready and who might not be ready to be a peer visitor. People who are ready have the ability to listen. They are comfortable meeting new people. They're comfortable working in a hospital, which is, I did have a peer training one time, and at the end of the training, the person said to me, I'm a little uncomfortable in a hospital. You know, still useful, and he was very kind, but good to know ahead of time. Some people who are not ready, maybe people who are still expressing a lot of anger, maybe have some unresolved feelings, frustration. They may need more time to work through these emotions before they're ready to come back in and be a peer visitor. Facilitating visits. Where, when, how often. If you were to ask me that, I would say it depends on the schedule of the coordinator. Whatever works for you and your hospital and your staff and your team is going to be the best schedule. I'm going to provide you with some options that you can think about. But again, it's going to be up to you. These are some different format options. One, you can have established visitation hours. So when I was a coordinator, this is what I did for, I think, almost 2 years. I had Wednesday evenings from 6 to 8, we had peer visitation. So peers would show up at 6, you know, and they would visit for as long as they had patients to see. And then we would meet, I would see how the visit went, and they would go home. This also gave them an opportunity to see each other. So I would have 2 to 4 peers scheduled in the evening. You can do drop-in visiting. I personally didn't do this, but I think Sarah can talk to this later, if I'm correct, what drop-in visiting might look like. But that would be someone being able to drop in and see you at their, you know, at a time that's more convenient for them. On-call visitors would be if I'm doing my peer visitation on Wednesday night, but on Thursday I'm walking around visiting patients and I find someone who could really use someone to talk to. I may have a few peers who are willing to come in on call, so more flexible schedules, and could come visit that patient. There's another method, which is peer visiting during group meetings or before group meetings. So this would be combining peer visitation and the Trauma Survivor Support Group and having them all in the same evening. Say your support group starts at 6:30, and you would have peer visitors come in at 5 o'clock. So from 5 till 6:30, they would be visiting patients, and then at 6:30, they would come down to the group meeting, which can include a little bit of debriefing and a supportive environment for a group. Or you can combine whatever works for you. You're going to need to screen, consent, and match patients with a peer. Screening involves who's in the trauma center that day, who's awake, alert, you know, what kind of pain are they in? Are they scheduled for the OR? Are they scheduled to be discharged? So who would be there, for me, for example, it would be who would be there on Wednesday evenings and would be available for a peer visit and was interested in a peer visit. And then consenting, going to their room, talking to them about the program and asking their permission to have a peer come see them and documenting that appropriately in the medical records. And then matching them with a peer, which all depends on who comes your way. All of our peers during the training were prepared, and we talked about seeing patients, even if they didn't meet the same injury type. And that was a part of our training process. You know, I might match, as opposed to two people who had similar injuries, I may actually match a mother with another mother if those were the patient's immediate concerns, or college student women. So there are lots of things to consider when matching with peers, and it's helpful to know what peers you have trained in order to help you decide how to match those peers with patients in the trauma center. I would brief the peer before the visit, let them know what room the patient's in, what their name is, anything else that I felt was necessary for them to know before they went for the visit. And I would always debrief with the peer after the visit to see how it went, were there any issues that came up that I needed to know about, and I would also check in with the patient who was visited and just make sure everything was okay. When we said the basics, this really is the basics of peer visitation. I wanted to provide you with an overview to help you better understand the program, the pieces of the program. So if you were to go back and talk to your staff about this, you'll be able to bring them full picture of what peer visitation could be at your center. I think it's more important that you hear from Sarah and Jen, who are going to speak next, about their experience with the TSN, how it works at Metro Health, and what Jen has found important and you know, worthwhile about being a peer visitor. So at this point in time, I'm going to hand it over to Sarah.
Hi. Hopefully everybody can hear me fine, but my name is Sarah. I'm over at I'm at Metro Health in Cleveland, Ohio, and we've been running our peer visitor program for it'll be exactly 1 year, July 1st. It's been the most successful part of our overall program. It really has become the crux that everything else succeeds upon. So it's something that's really important to me, so I'm glad to have the opportunity to share our experience with it. There's a couple of things after hearing everything that Liz said that I just want to expound upon and just kind of tell you what we're doing in practice, you know, what this looks like in practice. So, you know, there's two parts of it. There's the training the volunteer and identifying and training the volunteer and getting them ready. But then there's also the identifying and prepping the patient and getting them ready and putting those two things together. Obviously, this is a crucial and sensitive time for most people, be it the ones that are giving the visit or the ones that are receiving. So we want to pay attention to a lot of the kind of corollary cues that kind of happen on a trauma floor for appropriateness and for ultimately for success of the program. So the first things first, you know, we're trying to protect everyone involved. So we want to protect those that are visiting, and we want to protect those that are getting those visits. And so it's important to pay attention to some of these details. So the way that I do it is that I have basically 5 components for getting my volunteers. And the best way I have found to get a volunteer is to ask an orthopedic or trauma surgeon for a recommendation for a patient that they feel has done well in their recovery, maybe beat the odds, maybe really just faced a large amount of injury with a large amount of grace, the things that kind of set them apart. If you stick out in an orthopedic surgeon's mind or a trauma surgeon's mind, you know, that is that's a pretty big deal. So the next thing that I do is then reach out to those patients, and if I get 20 patient recommendations, I might get 5 people that are interested, but that's enough. And I bring them in, I train them, I set them through the hospital volunteer program, and creating that relationship with your hospital volunteer program is key. There's a lot of little hiccups and bumps and bruises along the way to kind of get people through that program that can be pretty difficult. So you want to make sure that you've kind of got that ironed out before you start sending people through that system, down to who has to get what immunizations and what are the procedures and policies and trainings and whatnot. So that's the next thing I do. And then I create a relationship with the peer visitor. I like to talk with them. I train them personally. I get to know them a little bit, get to know their strengths and weaknesses, and see if they're going to be appropriate to visit on the floor, if they're going to be more appropriate to just kind of help me with something or do more programmatic things. And then I troubleshoot. There are definitely people that are very eager and want to be a part of this, but it's just not appropriate. And that's a gut check. I would assume that in the positions that you're in, you all know when you come across somebody that really just isn't ready to provide that kind of support, or just doesn't have the capacity to do so. So that's a big thing that you have to address. One of the things with troubleshooting I'll speak to for just a second is that you're looking at patients that are dealing with major trauma and dealing with post-traumatic stress, and you're trying to help them by sending in a peer visitor or a volunteer to discuss those things and work them through it. But they themselves have those same issues, and so you might have somebody that gets on the hospital floor and can't handle the smell, or deals with or walks past their own room, or hears the helicopter landing. And there's a lot of things that can trigger, so you really have to explore that with the people that you're working with, and not be afraid to ask, what are some of the things that are still hard for you? Because if you really don't want to find that out on the floor. So that's the troubleshooting piece, and then celebrating the success of it. Every connection that they make, every time they go into a room and they talk to somebody, and that person is a little bit better for it, or forgot their pain for a minute, or had a chance to just smile for the first time in 3 days, or got to talk to somebody about going to the bathroom that actually understands what that's like. There's a lot involved in that, and people are really grateful, and you want to celebrate those successes, not just for the patient, but for the visitor as well. So the second part of what I do is the actual visit, and Liz talked a little bit about the method that I use, which is I don't have a specific time that people come for visits. I let people dictate that. They are hospital volunteers. They are volunteering their time. I cannot pay them with anything other than my pretty face and words of gratitude. So it's important to me that they don't get burned out, and that they come when they can come and they can make it. So I do a lot of juggling and a lot of schedule shifting, and I make sure sometimes that it's not always convenient for me, but it's convenient for them, and I want them to be here, because that to me is the most important part. So that being said, I can't really go around and ask people, would they like a visit? I've got this person coming on this day at this time, because I don't always know. And so the way that I do it is I visit people, I introduce them to the Trauma Survivors Network, and the program and the services that we have available to them. I talk with them about their hospital stay. I get a gauge for how they're feeling. Sometimes I'm dealing with people that aren't able to meet or really hold a conversation yet, or maybe we're dealing with brain injury, and I talk to their families, and I see if they need something. And then I let them know that they may get a volunteer come in, they may have a volunteer that can come in and speak with them, and that they always have the right to decline. I've been doing this since July 1st of 2013. I have had one patient decline. So my visitors always go in, and most people are really, really excited to see them. So that's the next step of it. You know, I let them know that someone's coming, and then I send somebody in when they get here, and then I follow up with the patient or family afterwards just to see how they're doing as part of their hospital course. So Liz also mentioned documenting in medical records. For lack of saying the wrong thing, I don't technically do that because I also just see families sometimes. So I treat it more like a pastoral care note, if you're familiar with that. And I just let people know that I was there. You know, it's an ancillary service. It's a service that if they want it, they can have it. If they don't want it, you still know that it's here. So it's not necessarily something that I treat as a documentable progress note. So the most important part for me with my visitors is the briefing and debriefing. There's two reasons I do that. One is I don't want them to be totally unaware of what they're going into in a room. Sometimes there's very sensitive situations, and I have found in my own practice that I sometimes say things that I don't realize I shouldn't be saying in that moment. You know, if somebody has just lost their ability to walk, I really need to make sure I'm not saying puns that don't make sense or that hurt, like, you know, well, when you walk out of here, because they're not going to walk out of here. So those are some of the things. I always tell the story that I met a man who was a hand amputee, and I was trying to explain the program to him, and I just said, well, it's so you have a hand in your recovery. And he said, well, that's good. I only have one. So, you know, you want to be careful, and you don't want to send people in and say, you know, and not have an idea of what's happening. So the briefing part is really important. And I only give information they need. They don't get last names. They don't get any other sort of identifiable information. I'm really trying to protect the patient there as well as my visitors, because some of these patients, you know, they're on the news and they know who they are when they come here. And so it's just best to try to keep as little information as possible. And then the debriefing part. I don't want to send my peer visitors home carrying a heavy heart. I don't want them to have talked to somebody about something that they've gone through or seen something that triggers something for them, and they feel like they need to go maybe talk to somebody else about that, and then we have a breach of confidentiality, and or that they just leave here feeling heavy. I don't want that. That's not what this is for. So I make sure I am debriefing with them. We're walking through it. We're kind of talking about the awkward parts of it, the things that went well, the things that concerned them. And a couple of things come out of that. Sometimes they tell me things that are helpful in the overall care of the patient that maybe they didn't tell their docs. Sometimes they tell me, you know, that they're concerned about a patient, and I'm able to say, hey, you know, maybe we should talk to somebody about a psych referral or something of the sort, so that they're leaving with all of the services that they could possibly receive under one roof. They've received them, or at least had the opportunity to. So that's kind of where I'm at, and then and how I put the program together here. It's gone really well. We've got a decent amount of visitors. Pretty much everybody that started with me a year ago is still with me, and we're growing every week. You know, we are continually looking and asking people to be a part of this program, and really searching out those referrals and recommendations. It's a pretty powerful tool to have a physician recommend a patient. And I really wouldn't have done it any other way. I'm glad I did it that way. And then I'm going to turn it over here to Jen, who is really the only reason this works, because she and the people that she volunteers with, they come in every week. They give me their time, they give me their commitments and their energy, and you know, honestly, this would not be successful without them. So if I've had any success in this, it's because of them. So I'm going to turn it over to Jen so she can talk a little bit about what it's like for her, and if you have any questions at the end, I'll gladly answer.
So about a year and a half after my accident, my trauma accident, I got a phone call from Sarah, and a voicemail was left, and she said, you know, my name is Sarah, I'm from Metro Health, and your name was given to me by your orthopedic trauma surgeon, and I wanted to get you involved in this program. And for me, that was the most powerful thing, because I looked I really look up to my surgeon, and she saved my limbs. So for me, like, to hear that she, a year and a half after my accident, was still thinking about me and my recovery was huge. And for me to be able to give back to her and Metro Health was something that I found very important for me to make sure that I can fit into my schedule. So when I came and I met Sarah and I learned about the program, it was very moving for me, and I thought that this could be definitely a big part of my own recovery and learning how to deal with my pain or my scars or just anything for the rest of my life, because this is something that the trauma that I endured will be something that I'll never be able to just forget about. It's a day-to-day reminder when I'm walking or when I'm looking in the mirror at the scars that I have. So for me to come back and be able to share that with current patients is, important, because I feel like if you just put it in the hands of, for me, my faith and my belief in God, I was able to move and be able to learn to do everything else again, to learn to continue to work and to continue to have relationships with my family and my friends, and to come in and meet new people and give them advice on how to get back to your new normal, because it is not your old normal, as one of my peer visitors and I, that we tell everybody, it's a new norm that you learn, and you have to figure out and learn how to maybe walk again or run again if you can, or pick up things or work, or maybe you can't work. Whatever the case may be, it's your new normal, and you have to learn to adjust to it. So for us to be able to come back and talk to these people, it's amazing, because we walk into the rooms and sometimes people hide from us. They put their pillows over their faces or their sheets up over their heads or their gowns because they don't feel like talking or being poked at or pried again. And, the first thing that we say is, we are not employees of the hospital. We are just fellow trauma survivors. And then they're okay. And they put down the pillow and the sheet, and they want to talk to us and have a good time. And sometimes these people don't even want to talk about their accident. They just want to have someone to talk to. And it's nice because we can give that service to somebody who might not have any family or friends, so we can come in and be that support for them. So, it's empowering to be able to do that and to come and help them through their recovery. And like Sarah said, help them, talk to them about going to the bathroom or their therapy or putting on a shirt again, because it's something you have to learn all over again, or getting in a car, getting out of a car. Just the simple things that we all take for granted every single day that we all have to, as survivors, have to learn to do again. So to have someone come in and be able to talk to you about it, and the hardships and the dark moments and the tears and the yelling and the laughing and the smiling, it's really it's important, and it's moving, and it's something that they can't get from their doctors or nurses or even their family. They get better, they get put back together, and they get sewed up and stitched up, and everybody is, we're very grateful for the ability of the doctors to be able to put us all back together. But the real thing is the nurses and the doctors don't know what it's like to use a bedside commode or a sliding board or a Hoyer lift or any of those things that we have to learn how to do. And so it's nice to be able to talk to them and connect with them.
Can you talk a little bit about the impact you've had with some of your visitors, maybe one of the ones that have sort of benefited you or kind of moved you the most?
I think that the ones that I feel like everybody moves me, but there are certain patients that will move you more. Those are the ones who really want to get better, and that by your visit it helps them. Those are the most moving ones, and you see, especially if you come back the following week and they're still here and you see their progress. That is the best feeling in the world, when you see them from ICU to the orthopedic floor to then rehab. To see them move throughout their whole progress is really amazing, and to be with their family that whole time, and it's just pretty powerful.
So one of the things that Jen's probably not really sharing is that, she was in a pretty horrific accident, and she was 3 limbs out. She was in this hospital for a long time, and we nearly didn't have Jen. So for her to be a little over 2 years out from her accident, one of the things that she's not sharing is that when she comes here, she doesn't wear the standard volunteer shirt that everybody's supposed to wear. She actually wears tank tops because she has some pretty significant scars on her arms. She has some pretty significant scars on her legs. She wants to show that to the people that she's with to say, listen, this is okay. This is what's left of that, but this is what, the new me looks like, and I'm moving forward. Look what I can do now. She's a business owner here in Cleveland, Ohio. She owns her own hair salon, so as you could tell, if you break both arms in an accident, owning your own hair salon can get a little bit difficult, but she has managed, and she has thrived, and she is my most frequent visitor, which is saying something for a business owner as well. And she does some pretty powerful work here, getting into these rooms and really talking to people about what this is going to really look like, what it's going to feel like, and even just helping people understand what kind of questions they should be asking through their healing and their recovery and their care. So, it's been a process and a road for everyone involved. But like I said, when you look at somebody like Jen, who's 2 years out, helping somebody who's only a couple weeks out, it's a no-brainer. This is just something that works, and it's important. So, thanks, Jen, for sharing today. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thanks to both of you. We have 20 minutes left in the hour, and we are here. I can open up the lines right now. Everyone is muted, but what I'll do in a moment is unmute, and if any of you have questions for any of us, please feel free to ask. There's also a spot for questions at the bottom. If you want to write them in, you can send us a message. And before I forget, you have my email, or if you want to get a hold of Sarah after this, if you go to the TSN website and go to Metro Health, you'll be able to find Sarah's email and phone number there. So let me, or I might need Ian's help to unmute everybody. If you have a question, I'll just do it like this. If you can't talk yet, just a minute. If you have a lot going on in your background, please feel free to mute yourself again. But otherwise, the lines are open. Does anybody have a question?
Yeah, this is Kathy Ayers in San Diego. I was just wondering, you may have said this and I missed it, but it was Sarah's position. Does she actually have a paid position? And if so, how did you all get approval for that?
Yes. Sarah, do you want me to answer? Sarah's position is paid. Right now, there's current grant funding through a study that's being conducted that's funding 6 full-time coordinator positions, and Sarah is one of those.
Okay, good, thanks.
I can expound just for a second. I am grant funded right now, but I am currently in the works of being funded by our hospital. There's been a number of different avenues that are willing to start looking into funding options because of the push for increased patient experience and a lot of the satisfaction scores that drive a lot of our revenue and things like that as well. So this is really in line with hospital missions across the nation. So I don't at all worry, and I have 2 kids at home, so I should be worried. I don't at all worry that I will not have a job when the grant is up.
Oh, that's fabulous. Definitely shows value in what you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other questions?
This is Kathy from Delaware. I was wondering what the cost of the training manuals and whatnot were, and also for joining the Trauma Survivors Network.
So I can answer that one. If you are, so it all depends. If your site, if I remember correctly, you are an American Trauma Society institutional member.
That's
if you're
correct.
An institution, okay, then the TSN is a free member benefit. So basically what happens is there's an MOU that gets signed between the ATS and your hospital, and once that's established, you become a TSN site and you have access to all of these materials. If you are not an ATS institutional member, the annual fee is $1,500. So nothing, Kathy. No money for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Liz, this is Kathy Ayers again. On the screen, it says that this presentation is recorded, and so I'm just wondering if you wanted to access it, what would you do, and are the slides available also?
Yeah. So we are hoping to put the recorded ones. So once we record them, we download them, and then Ian will has them now. And I think one of the thoughts was to put them in on the TSN site. If you're a TSN, if you're a coordinator with us, there's an extra set of resources, which is where you find the implementation guide. So go ahead and put them there for people to be able to go back and see them again.
Perfect.
Yeah. Anything else? As you can probably tell, peer visitation is something that's close to my heart. It's close to Sarah's heart, and obviously Jen. I believe strongly in these kinds of programs in trauma centers, and I understand that not everybody is a full-time coordinator like Sarah is, but we are trying to help anybody be able to do this with maybe 1 or 2 survivors in your center. Just to get it started, and I'm willing to work with you to troubleshoot and figure out how you can make that happen. I may not have all the answers for you, but I believe so strongly in these programs that whatever it is that you need, we'll try and figure it out so that you can make this happen. If you're, if you have that same drive that we do.
Liz, can I interject here?
Go right ahead.
So I was just going to say that for those of you that are not full-time Trauma Survivors Network coordinators like I am, that can't devote all of your energy to every aspect of this program, this is actually one of the easier programs to implement because so much of it is actually not on you. A big part of it goes back to your volunteer services, and they will coordinate the majority of the details, getting people, vetting people, getting them through their training, making sure their background checks are okay. If you're someone that's working on the floor, or you can only do this once in a blue moon, that's okay too. It's just getting, like Liz said, 1 or 2 people on board that are willing to do and put the time in for you. And even if you're on the floor, I go out on the floor with my visitors. I don't go into the visits with them, but I'm on the floor, I'm there. So even if you're doing other things, they can be visiting while you're around. So it's something you can incorporate into your sort of daily schedule, weekly schedule, monthly schedule, as you see fit and as you think is going to work for your hospital. But it's one of the easier things to do because as a coordinator, frankly, you're not doing a lot of the work. The volunteer's doing the most of the work, and the hospital volunteer services are doing all of the background and security and confidentiality and all of that good stuff. So once you get them set, they're pretty well set. My visitors, my seasoned visitors, they visit on their own. They pick a piece of paper up from me, we brief really quickly. They're on the floor for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. They come back to me, we talk for another 10 minutes. That was my time with them. So, as people are new, it takes a little bit more time for getting them up and running. But once they're ready to go, they're golden.
When you said that you don't go into the room with them, is there a way that, like certainly, you talked about vetting them before they ever even go in the rooms and that kind of thing, but I'm just wondering, do you get feedback from the patients, or is there some kind of a evaluation form, or how do you know that their whole presentation and attitude is great? I mean, because you don't ever see them.
Well, it's a good question. So when I first get started with someone, I do go in.
Oh, okay.
And just the first few visits, I'll go with them.
Got it.
But I don't know how do we maintain that? How do I know that they're staying true to who I thought they were in those moments? Hospitals are doing it a little bit different everywhere, but either I visit with the patient afterwards and just see how they're doing. Some hospitals do a formal post-peer visit survey, which is, a little 5-question, 3 questionnaire, that assesses their satisfaction or their feedback on the visit.
Yeah.
Again, it's a little bit of more time, but it's something that definitely you can also use for, you know, future research and things that are really good for just accounting for patient satisfaction in general.
Perfect.
Good questions. Any more? All right. Well, we do hope this was helpful. And again, if you do have questions, please let us know afterwards. And if you're interested